All right, class. So yesterday we covered square roots. Square roots was the first page where we had to learn how to simplify these radicals. Today you're going to flip to the back page and we're going to cover how to solve using radicals. In this case, we're just going to use square roots, but this kind of works on how you solve with all radicals. So solving a quadratic equation using radicals. In number 1, you see how we have 4x squared minus 2 equals 98? Okay, the one way we learned to solve these so far was by factoring, but this is a second method that will work as well. So we can try to solve this the same way you'd solve for x, even though there's an x squared. So we kind of split the equal sign. We want to get everything away from the x. So how do we cancel out a minus 2? To cancel out a minus 2 is plus 2. We get rid of that, and we're left with 4 times x squared equals 100. Okay, now we want to cancel out what's attached to that x squared to get the x squared alone. So we want to cancel out that times 4. How do you cancel out times 4? You would divide by 4 on both sides, and that 4 would cancel. So now we're left with x squared equals 25. So we got the x squared alone. The last thing we have to do now is get rid of that squared. Okay, so to get rid of the squared, the inverse is taking the square root. So we're going to solve by taking the square root of both sides. Okay, so we take the square root of x squared, you're left with x. Because x times x is x squared, so the square root of x squared is x. And the square root of 25 is 5. Okay, and now I'm going to make one little note. When solving with square roots, remember plus or minus. And here's why. So when we're solving, it's not just positive 5, it's positive 5 or negative 5. So we'll put plus or minus 5. Another way to write this would be x equals 5 or negative 5. Okay, these are both the same answer. There's two different ways to write it. And the reason why this works is because if I take positive 5, if I go right here and I take positive 5 and I square it, 5 squared is 25. If I take negative 5 and I plug it in for x, negative 5 squared, or negative 5 times negative 5, is also 25. So there's actually two different answers here. It's 5 or negative 5. And again, when you're solving with square roots, you have to do plus or minus, which means positive or negative. Number 2, solving with square roots. So get rid of everything that's not attached first. And in this case, we have parentheses that are kind of attached to that. It's the x minus 4 squared. So what we want to do is get rid of anything that's not included here. So we have to cancel out that times 1/5. The inverse of or opposite of times 1/5 is times 5. This is also called fraction busting because it gets rid of the fraction in the front. So 5 times 1/5 cancels. We are left with x minus 4 squared equals 30. Now, how do we cancel out the squared? Because we're kind of working our way into the parentheses. So now get rid of that squared by taking the square root. Oops, make it look nicer. Square root of both sides. So we have x minus 4 now equals, we took the square root and we're solving, so we have to do plus or minus square root of 30. So x minus 4 equals plus or minus square root of 30. Now the last step is just get rid of that minus 4. So we add 4. We will get x equals positive 4 plus or minus square root of 30. And I will usually put that 4 in the front and the square root at the end, because that way I'm kind of clear of what's in the square root. And here's why. If I did this, if I wrote plus or minus square root of 30 plus 4, it's kind of hard to tell if that plus 4 is in the square root or not. So just to be clear and never make mistakes, I put that 4 in the front and the square root after. Okay, another way you could write this is x equals 4 plus square root of 30, or x equals 4 minus square root 30. These are both correct. The one on the bottom, the one on the top. Both of these answers work. I don't care how you write it. They both mean the same thing. Number 3, solving using square roots. So get rid of what's not attached. You see how we want to get this by itself. So we have to get rid of a positive 3. To do that, you will subtract 3. 3 minus 3 cancels. So we are left with negative 7x squared equals negative 4. All right. How do we get rid of a times negative 7? You would divide by negative 7 to get x squared equals negative 4 divided by negative 7 is 4 over 7. So it'd be positive 4 over 7. How do we get rid of a x squared? You're going to take the square root. So you would get x equals, we took the square root when we're solving, so it's going to be plus or minus the square root of 4 over 7. Okay, now when we're solving, this is technically correct, but what we should do is we should simplify this radical. So what we did yesterday was we would take this and break it into 2 parts. So x equals plus or minus square root of 4 over the square root of 7. And remember, we can't have a square root on the bottom. So we're going to change this 7 into 49. 7 times 7 is 49. So multiply the top and the bottom by 7. You end up with x equals plus or minus. What is the square root of 4? The square root of 4 is 2. So on the top, it's 2 square root 7. On the bottom, what is 7 times 7? 49. What is the square root of 49? 7. So this is the simplified answer. This answer right here is technically correct, but you should simplify your radical by breaking that fraction apart. Okay, and the last one, number 4. How do you get rid of a plus 10? Subtract 10 to get 6 times the quantity of m plus 7 squared equals 54. How do you get rid of the times 6? Divide by 6. So we get m plus 7 squared equals 54 divided by 6 is 9. Now we got to cancel out that square. How do you cancel the square? You take the square root. So m plus 7 equals, you see where you took the square root? This is plus or minus, and the square root of 9 is 3. So it's plus or minus 3. Because 3 squared is 9, and negative 3 squared is also 9. So now we have 2 equations. We have m plus 7 equals 3, or we have m plus 7 equals negative 3. There's actually 2 equations we're solving here. You're going to subtract 7 in both of them, and you end up with m equals negative 4, or m equals negative 11. So your two answers are negative 4 and negative 11. And we do that when the answer comes out to like something nice. If this were a square root, we'd have to keep plus or minus. But since it's a nice even number like 3, or a nice whole number like 3, we actually find the two numbers to be negative 4 and negative 11. And that's how we solve with square roots.